we are not alone, and we are not alone both spiritually and physically. There are magnificent beings all through this galaxy who are of the light and who are basically our space family. Our original ancestors came from 50 star nations across this galaxy to colonize Mu, or Lemuria as is more popularly known. So let us understand that they are here again, these wonderful ancestors of us, to reconnect with us, to teach us about what it's like to be fully conscious, and to aid us in becoming a wonderful star nation with a galactic society that is able to become a full working member of this galactic federation of light. Now, when Lemuria was destroyed, as we saw in the beginning part, there were two parts to it. One part was the surface world. The other part was the inner earth world. Now, the inner earth people back then found themselves largely isolated by the Anunnaki from the surface world, but it now was a world of limited consciousness, attempting to isolate their full consciousness inner realm from the surface world. Now, this is inner earth. This is the way the earth really looks and acts. It has all kinds of things happening every day that show you that this world is hollow. We have, for instance, the Apollo 11, the Apollo 14 pictures that I've shown in other lectures. We have simple facts that happen every year. In the heart of winter in the Arctic, which lasts all the way into late spring, which is down here, April, May, you have pollen on the ice floes. You have things which sound crazy like bees. Bees do not live in the heart of the Arctic Circle and above it, because there's nothing there. There's no trees. There's only two things, ice and snow. And all of it surrounded by an amazing, unbelievable cold. Yet you have all these things happening, bees, pollen, etc. There's even some people who have studied the auroras who have discovered that, and this of course is something that mainstream science tries to stop them from saying, but many scientists have said the auroras are really the reflection of our central sun. This thing, our central sun. So, we have a world on the inside, and it's just a continuation of the world on the outside. I really like to look at this being one surface. It goes around like this. This is then the outer world that we know. It goes inward through the polar entrances and becomes an inner world. And this thing over here is the point at which the gravity point of inner Earth goes opposite from the gravity point of outer Earth. So when we're on the surface of the planet, we have one reaction. When we're inside the planet, we have a similar reaction. It looks like everything is flat and we're on top of something. The only difference is that on the outer world, you can see the stars and the planets at night. In the inner world, you just see this wonderful, smoky, bright thing called the central sun. Now, and these other points represent center points for the balance of the planet, center points also for how the planet is actually hung. It's quite different from the gravitational science that you hear, like for instance the orbital mechanics that was begun originally by Kepler. I tend to be a person whose concept of science is a lot different than the mainstream. So let's move forward. And of course in there is the great crystal cities. Now the name is called Agartha. The first part of this is Lemurian, means inner, Ag. Artha is the original Lemurian name for Earth. This is really the planet Artha, if you were to use Lemurian or the language of Mu. And of course around it is the central sun. Now let's move forward about what went on here. Now this is Lemuria. This is the place that was sunk when that one moon collapsed on it. And when I was doing Lemuria Fact and Fiction, that DVD, I discovered from doing lots of research that basically the subsidence or zones that sunk in the Pacific basically prove that long time ago there was a massive disaster, a catastrophe as they call it, that caused the sinking of the surface world continent on into the Pacific bottom. So the answer that many geologists were then able to ask, did Lemuria actually exist? Answer, high probability yes. And so this, as far as I'm concerned, is real. And this is the Hawaiian Islands, and the capital of Lemuria, the surface world, was located just out from where the Hawaiian Islands were. And so that would be Hamakula was roughly right around here, if you were to get into it. And this represents islands that were forced up, are all these micro islands and the major islands. For instance, even the ones near the surface, near the continent of Asia, you have the Philippines, for instance. The Philippines has very special energies, as does Hawaii, as does many of these islands that are remnants of Lemuria because of the Lemurian energy. And there are also ruins which cannot be fully explained that are parts, remnants of Lemuria. And there are even ancient ruins of Lemuria on the sides of Haleakala and Maui and the Hawaiian Islands. So, onward. Now let's look at the Inner Earth agenda. From the beginning, the purpose was to aid the Ascended Masters, to protect Earth's lands, to be the steward for Gaia. Gaia, of course, is the Greek word for Earth, the mother goddess. So, and lastly, to link with our space family, to be the liaison for the present time with the Galactic Federation. So what the Anunnaki were doing very simply was being blocked at one point. All the portals between the surface world and Agartha were blocked. And so the only way to get in was by either using your powers or simply allowing for the Agarthans to let you in. So another thing that they did was maintain the ancient histories. Now what do they do now? What the Inner Earth people do now is they allow for the first contact base. This is an example of a base, not drawn to scale, the main base, which is near Shambhala, which is the capital of Agartha, and it's just below Tibet. They were watching the ceremony and spiritual awakening on our planet and using this as for readying us for first contact. They were also preparing our metamorphic light chambers so that when the time came after contact, we would be able to move into first contact into full consciousness as quickly as possible. So what they were doing, the reunion with Agartha is about love. The love of the inner earth, the love of the reconstituted outer earth coming together to create a total victory for the light.